I'm going to do a subject called industrial archaeology. Industrial archaeology, and I'm going to use a book and review a book to help get across what it all is. At school I did all the usual things: Latin, French, English, maths, chemistry, biology, all the rest, and there was an add-on subject called industrial archaeology. It was a club really more than an official subject, and as part of this course the kids at the school would be taken to places like Ironbridge, where cast iron was, I'm going to say invented, cast iron was used efficiently. The first iron bridge in the world is in Coalbrookdale, for example. We'd look at the furnaces, we would look at the coal mines. I went down a coal mine, and one of the remaining coal mines in England, which was in the middle of the country, and we were showing the coal mine. We were showing the winches to pull the lifts full of coal up. We were showing the engines to pump the water out of the mine. Those would have been steam driven in the 18th century, and water driven as well. Sorry, steam driven in the 19th century. And the people would go down with a candle and they would hack out this coal. So it's about sort of industry. It's about the relics of the industry. It's about the buildings and what happened to society. The mills, the big landowners made these mills by rivers in England. They filled them with workers. They made textiles, for example. The workers had to be housed. They made towns with rows, back-to-back houses for the labour. At the end of each row there would be a pub. At the other end of the row there would be a chapel. There would be a school. There would be stables. There would be an abattoir. There would be a police station. That sort of thing. So it's all intertwined with what happened in England. So we've come across a book called Art and the Industrial Revolution. I'm going to go through the book with you very quickly. If you look at portraits, this is really the point of this video. If you look at portraits in England, every portrait shows a cleric, an archbishop, a priest, a saint, or it shows a landowner with title, aristocratic landowner, or it shows someone royal, or it shows someone royal from abroad, or someone abroad who was killed. So there was a time when those portraits were in all the houses and all the palaces and the courts and the churches, etc., etc. And there was a time when suddenly other people came to be painted. And this is what this book's about. In about 1750, roughly speaking, some of the landowners were traders, not aristocracy, and they made their money by mining, by manufacturing, by shipping, by insurance, by lending money, etc., etc. And they had enough money to have their own portraits. So you'll see in some places the kings, the queens, the priests. Then suddenly you'll see the ship owners. Then you'll see the doctors. Then you'll see the lawyers. So a portrait of a doctor usually shows a man holding spectacles or a book. A portrait of a lawyer usually shows a man holding a scroll. A landowner usually shows a man with a wife by a tree with a couple of dogs and an estate. It's that sort of thing. So the pictures change in England. They change. And then, of course, after that, you get the pictures of the actual industrial things. So you get pictures like this bridge here, for example, Robert Stevenson's Tubular Bridge across Conway River. This is a Welsh bridge made of metal and stone. It's a combination. And you can see this very curious thing where you've got a Gothic castle at one end to support the bridge. And you've got the modern, flat, profiled metal bridge. The sky looks like a 18th century sky in a portrait. And it's this sort of hybrid picture, bridging old and new. And this book is full of pictures showing industry. These are the furnaces which they used to chuck the ore into, melts the stone, broken up stone, to get the metal out of it. They would also use furnaces to make cement, lime kilns. So this is the other thing. At the school I would have to go to look at canals. And the canals in England are shallow. You can stand in them, most of them, and you won't go underneath. They're about 5 foot deep, and they're not very wide. But the canals were used for moving coal and pottery and clay and iron and timber and grain. After the canals came the railways. So you can see it's quite interesting to some people. In the song Jerusalem, it mentions dark satanic mills, and these mills I'm talking about in the towns in England are the buildings in the song. National Trust in England likes to own stately homes, as we all know. The National Trust in England likes to own estates, but they're not very good at owning industrial buildings. They are not very good at owning ships, old ships like this steamer. So the National Trust will have a stately home where they can charge admittance. They'll have the land around it and all the stuff in the house, and they'll do very nicely, thank you very much. But when there's a industrial building at risk, they don't want to know. They don't want to know about the churches that are falling to bits. They don't want to know about the factories and the railway stations and the bridges that are falling to bits, the docks. They don't want to buy boats which are falling to bits. And it is a fairly ignored and popular part of British culture. But there are people who like it and understand it. And it is, as I say, really very central to what happened in England all those years ago. Okay, well, I hope I'm bored you. We've talked about the Industrial Revolution, we've talked about art in the Industrial Revolution, and a few other things as well. Thanks for looking.